Good afternoon. My name is Karel van Apeldoorn. I'm Startup Grind Director in Guangzhou, China. And it's my pleasure to announce the following two guests. It's Jon Swartz, USA Today tech reporter, who's going to talk Instagram to Mike Krieger, co-founder of Instagram. Mike came to the US in 2004, studied symbolic systems at Stanford, co-founded Instagram in 2010, created the first billion-dollar mobile app, and was invited by the First Lady in 2012 to, as a role model entrepreneur, to be her special guest at the State of the Union. It's my big pleasure to ask to the stage with a big Startup Grind welcome, Mike Krieger and Jon Swartz.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Hello.
You've been sitting most of the day? Are you do you want to stand up and kind of like relax? Okay, oh that's better. Okay, we'll take that. Really impressed with this event, by the way. I've never been to this before. I really like the eclectic, diverse viewpoints, especially the one on diversity, the panel, because that's something that's near and dear to our newspaper. And we're actually going to do more of those panels like we did at Stanford earlier this last year. We're going to be doing more in the next couple of years, especially, I hope, with CNN. So anyway, that's just a plug for something that we're trying to do. We're trying to write more about things that are not just tech-related, that involve people and ideas of culture. So anyway, just for what it's worth. It's great to see you, Mike.
Good to see you, too.
So I'm going to start off with kind of a loaded question. So I remember 2 years ago, Facebook decides to spend $1 billion on your company. And at the time, you had 13 employees, fewer than 22 million active users, and no websites. And being kind of a reactionary reporter that I am, my first reaction was, what the fuck is Facebook thinking of? But they were thinking the right things. I mean, what happened? I mean, what made them so interested in you? What did they see? Maybe you can tell me as a founder, because you saw it, they saw it, the rest of us didn't. If we didn't, we would have been rushing to try to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think in looking at us, even at the time, we had what at the time seemed like an insane number of people using the app every month, which was 22 million, which, you know, when we started, we're like, I had to write a business plan to get my visa. The government was like, prove you're a real company. And we're like, you need a business plan. And I wrote one, and I was like, maybe we'll have 1 million users after 2 years. So it was amazing. We had 22, and like success that was beyond what we expected. But the thing that we were looking at that we were really encouraged by was how much people kept coming back. So these weren't people that were like showing up once every other month. It was a lot of people coming back every day. And I think even at the time, you could tell, we had a core group of people that were in love with what we were doing, and that group was growing every single month, and we're really excited about it. And there's something about...
Were they predominantly younger users, or were they across the board? Because that seems to be the secret sauce, and still is, for what you guys do. They
were young, but they were starting to get more across the board. It was starting to get into the point where it was like, your mom was getting on Instagram. My grandmother was on Instagram, and I was pretty excited about that. And it was starting to shift to also be international. So 2012 was, I mean, besides getting acquired, we also launched on Android. Before that, every single conference I ever went to, the only question anybody asked was like, when's your Android app coming out? And we finally launched it. And that was kind of the turning point for going from a very US-based, you know, site that had grown, you know, somewhat in other countries, but was still mostly in the US, to having international growth just take off. I mean, Android's huge internationally, obviously. It can, you know, run the gamut from phones that are very affordable to ones that are more high-end, and that was really a turning point for us as well.
So was there a particular event or a type of mindset where you started to gain traction of what you were doing? Was it like maybe Justin, we mentioned this kind of offhandedly.
Yeah.
Justin Bieber joins and you think he's going to crash the system. He's going to just, but is there something like that, a seminal event that?
I think there was a few, and the funny part, and like this is true of my co-founder and I, is that we're incredibly heads down people, and you know, if they ever made a movie about Instagram, it would be in the office scenes would be incredibly boring because we're so heads down, and like there was very little drama between us. I mean, there still is not.
So it's kind of the anti-Facebook.
Maybe, and yeah. Like very much just like, you know, we were, you know, there weren't very many of us, so there wasn't that, you know, as much potential for one personality to get a hold of. And So when I look back, there's people who are like, oh, what was it like when Justin Bieber joined? Which like, at the time he was our first major celebrity to join. And we had done all of our infrastructure planning using the Justin Bieber method of infrastructure, which is like, you ask yourself, like, what happens when Justin Bieber joins? But we didn't actually expect that to happen. And then he did, and it was like, oh, the site stayed up. Like our scaling actually worked, which was a really good feeling. But so I look at moments like that. And then there's like personal moments as well. A lot of them are like, sort of big public figures joining. And I remember when the White House joined, it was, or Obama joined, it was kind of in preparation for the last election.
Was there a bigger impact when Obama joined or when Bieber joined?
Probably Bieber. Emotionally or user base? User base, probably Bieber. Emotionally, I was more proud.
By what magnitude was Bieber bigger than Obama?
Oh, I don't know. It's been a while. And actually, you have to, also Bieber joined when we were very young. He was a pretty early adopter, and then we had, a couple of years, and then I think we were legitimate enough to be part of, the Obama story in the last election. Yeah. It was a really, moving moment for me.
At what point do you think this is going to take off? Like, not just when Facebook buys you, but is there a point where you think this is really going to work? And how did that change you as an entrepreneur? And as a person, actually.
So, like, 4 hours after we launched in October of 2010, which feels like a long time ago, but really is, less than 5 years. And the first day we had something like 25,000 signups, and Kevin turns to me and is like, Mike, I think we're onto something. I don't know how big it's going to be, but it's something. And I didn't believe him then, and it actually took me over 1.5 years to actually believe him. And I woke up every single day expecting that was the day where like user growth would slow, or somebody else would come out and like take attention. And it actually, the thing I wish I was looking at early on was what I just mentioned when you asked about that kind of moment in April when we got acquired, like what they were looking at. Is if we'd had better metrics early on. We had terrible metrics for a long time. We were just trying to keep the site up, working on product. We didn't have a data person until we were 4 years old or 3 years old. So if I'd looked at the data, I would have said, oh, look, people don't just sign up, they keep coming back. Like our retention curves look great. You can do a cohort analysis and like these, everything is in the right direction. But in the absence of that, it was mostly an emotional thing. Like, well, people keep signing up, but I don't know if it's because they heard about it, but they'll stop using it next month. Like, is our growth real? How much are old users doing? I think one of the things that's changed in 5 years is that people starting today they're able to plug into things far more easily that can track some of these things for you versus having to build it from scratch.
When you were in the process of, oh, by the way, today there was some news. Is it Picado? You can basically convert your Instagrams into fake tattoos?
I saw one backstage,
did you see that?
actually.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone had seen that, but that actually came out today.
My favorite, you can also print Instagrams on marshmallows.
Wow. Yeah. So there's 3D printing and there's instant printing now?
Yeah, Instagram, yeah.
Wow. One of the things that's interesting to me, and it's something that you caught the crest of early, was this concept of visualization of social media. Facebook continues to grow at an incredible rate. So does Twitter. But in a sense, the younger crowd, that was always Facebook's fear that the younger crowd was going to leave it. Although, ironically, we live in a country that's aging and it's predominantly older, so that helps it. But I'm just wondering, did you foresee the amount of interest in taking photos or video on a social media site and the fact that it makes it a more sticky site? And we'll talk later about some of your numbers now and how you're the second largest social media network now. I
think a lot of it came out. We were, and we've told our bourbon story before, which was kind of our transition from our first app that we were working on, which was this HTML5 location-based service to Instagram. And the kind of key insight behind that transition was realizing that the thing that people were actually using within that product was the photos feature. Like, they kept coming back to that. We had points, we had achievements, we had like spinny stars. When you like unlocked an achievement, you could make plans. Like, there was a whole host of features, but people kept coming back to the simple thing of, I just want to express what I'm doing on the go. And I think it's a little easy to take that for granted today, but if you try to rewind back to 2010, there was nobody really else doing that well and doing that in a way that was just like super focused on simplicity and speed.
So the stage of building and maintaining your product, how do you do that? You mentioned something, this concept of firing your customers. How does that all kind of work? And the reason I'm asking you is because I think some of the brilliance of Facebook is that Mark Zuckerberg is so confident and has such a great idea of what he wants to do with that site. He'll make changes that he knows will initially piss the user off, but they'll eventually love the product feature. I think the opposite's true of Twitter, where I think they're almost terrified to make changes to that site. So the fact it's so static, and that's why it hasn't grown as quickly as it should, is that they're afraid they're going to scare people away. How do you do that? How do you keep adding features to it and gaining people and moving and churning when you don't want to lose what you already have?
Yeah, I think early on we realized that the people who we thought would love the product at first were actually not the first adopters. So when we came out, we're like, oh, at the time they were called iPhonographers, which really just shows the age of that term. Like, nobody would call anybody an iPhonographer today. You're all photographers. Like, you all have iPhones or Androids or whatever phones. But there was like an iPhonography movement, and they would have like iPhonography conferences. And so when we came out, we're like, oh, I bet the iPhonographers, I'm tired of saying that word, don't worry, we're gonna like love this product, and they were like gonna be all over it. And actually they hated it. They were like, oh, your resolution is too low, and like I can do this adjustment in a different app, I can't do it on yours. So if we'd gone really deeply after that audience and worried too much about what they thought once we launched, I think we would actually have like pivoted off the wrong path and like built, try to focus on high resolution uploads from day one instead of focusing on like having a great commenting experience or making it really easy for you to interact with people and find the people that you want to follow. So even early on, I think we had the sense of the people who we thought were going to use it aren't the people. So we should find out like the people who are falling in love with it, what do they love about it, keep going. But then as you grow, you also go to this phase of like, is that core audience still the one that is going to be in love with you 3-4 years down the line? And you have to move on. And most people, have stayed with us. And some people are like, you know what, I really want to go like somewhere else. And that's also fun.
What's your typical user? What's their age or their gender? Or
it's pretty all over the place. And I think it's very balanced demographically too. I think the most interesting thing is just seeing it grow abroad. Like, we're huge in Brazil, which is cool for me. Every time I go home, it's like we're bigger. I kind of measure success by the number of like Instagram logos on random billboards and signs in Brazil, and by that metric, we seem to be doing really well.
Yeah.
And in particular, like, I think it's interesting to see people find kind of sub-communities within that, and that can range from your family, but also I found out about this term sneakerhead this year, which are people who love sneakers, like tennis shoes, and there's a whole sneakerhead community on Instagram, and they like correspond about their favorite brands and like new exciting things. When they go to new cities, they find other sneakerheads. So there's a lot of room because it's public by default, and it's not about your friends, it's about your interests, to find those kind of niche communities.
Has your user base changed much since Facebook acquired you? Did you gain, obviously you gained more users because of that affiliation, but did you lose certain people who decided to move on somewhere else, or has it basically stayed the same?
We were worried about that. Those 6 months basically after we got acquired, we launched Android, were just insane for growth. There was a lot of people kind of finding out about us for the first time. Like, I love it. We've been, we take for granted in the States. I think Instagram has become, which is phenomenal, like a word that most people recognize. I kind of can tell the New York Times and other newspapers, when they write Instagram, they no longer do comma, a photo sharing. It's like, you can take for granted what it is now, which is amazing. But other countries are definitely like, what is Instagram? Like, we'll do user research, and there's still so much work to do over there as well.
You mentioned Brazil. Are there any other countries? The reason I'm asking you that is because today Tim Cook was speaking at the Goldman Sachs conference, and he talked about this incredible growth in China and India. That's a new kind of target market for Apple. I don't know if you know this, but they went over $700 billion in terms of market value. They became the first company ever to do that in business history. And actually, there's some thought that they might go over $1 trillion. But part of their strategy is they're growing incredibly fast in China, and they're talking about India. Is that what you think holds the key to growing even larger? Because you're now at, what, 300 million monthly actives, 30 billion photos are shared to date, 2.5 billion likes daily, 70 million photos shared daily on average.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to go. Like, there's countries in Europe where, people haven't found out about Instagram as much or gotten used to it. There's places like Saudi Arabia where it has grown a fair amount, and it's pretty exciting to see that.
Why so there?
I don't know. It's I think good access to enough smartphone penetration, and we find sometimes the core community forms and really spreads it around. Places like India are places where we have a long way to go there as well. So
now that you're number 2 behind Facebook and you passed Twitter, there was the infamous Fortune article in which Ev Williams, one of the Twitter co-founders, said he didn't give a shit that Instagram had passed Twitter in terms of popularity. I mean, that was kind of not to completely taken out of context, but there's some nuance to what he was saying. He was saying that what Medium is doing, or what Twitter does, is a little bit different than what Instagram does. So he didn't want to compare the two. But when you first heard that quote, what did you think? Was there any immediate reaction, or was it just kind of an affirmation of what you've been doing?
It was mostly like, I'm sure that was taken out of context, like having met Ev, like, and then I think as it came out, it was like, I think he was saying a lot more. So I think it was, you know, there's definitely times when things I've said have also gotten kind of pulled out. And
the reporters would never do that.
No, never.
No,
never.
we never do that. One thing, I was going to ask you about monetization, because Facebook's doing incredibly well in terms of mobile advertising and video.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, given your growth and the number of high-profile, influential celebrities who use Instagram, how that might be leveraged by you guys to create revenue for Facebook.
Yeah, so it's early days still. We're about maybe a year into ramping up monetization. We're really happy with what we've seen so far. Mostly going for very sort of premium polished advertising, which at first, you know, we tell the story that my co-founder reviewed every ad for the first few months, which, you know, is not a scalable way to scale your monetization business, but it's a great way of kind of setting the tone of what it's supposed to look like. And I look now, and there's a range of people, some of them you'd expect to put together great ads, like Mercedes had a really fun campaign where they actually took not really celebrities, but Instagram celebrities, people that were famous on Instagram, and got them involved in the campaign, to like insurance companies, where I don't wake up in the morning thinking like, oh, I bet insurance companies would run great Instagram ads, but they do. They're able to find.
Yeah, I would assume like auto makers,
like,
but you've said insurance.
Yeah,
really?
we've seen that, you know, and people, they find the ability to, you know, ultimately a lot of advertising is about telling your story, and visuals are so important to that. So there is a really interesting fit there, and I think we've created a really good foundation where now you can look at hundreds of ads that have run on Instagram and say, oh, that's what actually, you know, they should look like and act like and be.
What was, in a sense, what would have been the most effective? I mean, you mentioned, like, is there something that kind of, besides insurance, there's something that kind of stood out, like, you know, that I never would have thought that was going to be conducive to, because, you know, Facebook had that, there's always that debate about how successful Facebook is with small business ads on their site. There's that whole argument.
Take like Chobani, which is like not actually a yogurt brand I started eating after they advertised on Instagram, but like they were very interested in showing Chobani throughout the day, and like, you know, that was their campaign as well. So it can range from food to cars to insurance to airlines to actually the ones I really like are tourism agencies for particular countries, because what better way of getting people excited about coming to visit your country than having like beautiful visuals of it on Instagram. I'm trying to figure out which country. Or remember which country.
It's like a big. Is there an athlete who stands above and beyond everyone on Instagram?
I don't know about following. I think it's just pure coolness. Ted Ligety, if you don't follow him on Instagram, is like my favorite sports account. He does like, he shoots GoPro video of him going downhill, and then he posts them on Instagram. It's just like insane. It almost looks like a hyperlapse, but it's actually as fast as he's actually going down the mountain. It's super cool.
Wow. One last question actually was, where's social media going? I mean, in terms, I mean, I said, yeah, you have two and a half minutes to answer that question. No, but I'm wondering, I mean, does it still remain visual? The reason why I ask you is, Evan Williams started Medium. Medium, everyone thinks of as pure content. Well, you know what? The most popular features on Medium are videos. And they just started their own TV show called Forward, which is a half-hour sit-down interview show, which is hugely popular. So even within his ultra blog, you've got this visual element. And I'm wondering if that permeates all other types of social media, or does the text still have a chance, or does it still coexist?
Yeah, I think it does coexist. I think broadly, yes. Even on Instagram, you see, some people use the caption field for like, at the beach, or meeting my friend. But some people write actually like long form. You look at National Geographic, and they almost have like a mini article embedded on there below some of their posts, which is a really, or NASA Goddard, I don't pronounce it, but like the NASA account has like, feels like a little like space textbook below each post. So there is that interplay. Yeah. And I still love the written word. I love reading. I wrote a long Medium article a couple of months ago, and that was a lot of fun. So it's.
What did you write about?
Just Instagram and early days and all that craziness.
Do you see yourself sticking around for the long term, or trying something else? I mean, is there ever an urge to try something new?
I think I not joke, but I always say like my job has been different every single year. Like first year was what is this product we're going to build? Can we get it off the ground? Can we make something that sticks? Second year was, all right, it did, now scale it or die. Third year was, okay, now maybe we should build a team around this stuff. This last year was continue to build that team, start trying to move multiple product initiatives forward at the same time, which is a whole new challenge. How do you get, we have over 80 engineers now, how do you get all of them to work together and collaborate and work efficiently? It's a huge challenge. So I think as long as that has that character of changing every year, it's still really different and very exciting.
So it's like the key is just kind of redefining yourself or coming up with something new to keep it fresh.
Yeah, which it has very much been.
And you've been able to do that with Kevin, where you don't overlap too much, or does that?
Yeah, the thing I always say is like this partnership has worked for over our 5-year anniversary. Kind of joke that we're like married, startup, married, but like is in May, and I think it's worked because we don't get in each other's business in some ways. Like we take very different parts of what needs to happen. Like the building side of engineering and all of that is what I take. He takes a lot of business. We brought on Marnie Levine to be on the CEO to be focused on monetization. So it's a really
you guys
nice
have been
balance.
fortunate though, because you look at a lot of companies, not just tech, but in particular non-tech, but even social media companies where there is a fracture between some of the founders and some of the companies we just mentioned. So
I feel very lucky. Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great talking to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.